Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Sean P.
I'm Big Roop.
And this is The Brothers.
I'm tired of the same rap songs. Every new hit's just to fucking sing along. Rapping so boring, now correct me if I'm wrong. It's like they took the art out the fucking art form. I'm tired of the same rap songs. Every new hit's just to fucking sing along. Rapping so boring, now correct me if I'm wrong. It's like they took the art out the fucking art form.
And we'd like to welcome you to Season 2 of The Brothers. We've been gone for a little while and took a little hiatus, but we're back. And we have a very deep and heavy topic today. A lot's been going on. And the title of today's episode is A Judgement Call.
Yes, sir.
Yes. And Big Roop, you want to just kind of take our listeners into today's topic and what it is we're going to get into?
Yeah, basically this is the case of Botham Jean, who was sadly killed in his own home in Texas. An off-duty officer, Amber Geiger, went to the wrong apartment. She assumed it was her apartment. Somehow gained access to the apartment. Found Mr. Jean in the house, eating ice cream, minding his business. Somehow, again, we don't know what exactly transpired, but shots were fired. He was hit at least twice, and they died either there or on the way to the hospital.
Right.
She was then subsequently charged with murder and was on trial this past 2 weeks based on, killing Mr. Jean in his own home. Her defense, I believe, was self-defense, which I don't know if that makes any sense. If you're going into somebody else's house, but somehow you're trying to defend yourself.
Right.
And anyway, the fact of the matter is she was convicted. But some interesting things happened after the conviction.
Right. And I think it's all the details of the incident itself, some of the details of the trial, some of the information that came out during the trial that led to obviously the verdict, and then the events after the verdict, which is what we're talking about today. Because a lot's been said about the case, and I mean everyone should either be aware of it or look into it. Botham, John was in his own home, doing virtually nothing other than eating ice cream. He was basically invaded in his home by accident or by not. And while posing a threat to no one in his own home, he was murdered. And like you said, she was convicted of murder. So the details that led up to it, I mean, that's a lot to take in and of itself. But the fact that she was convicted of murder.
Again, we live in apartment buildings. Not you, but I know I've went into a door before that wasn't mine, thinking it was mine.
Right.
Luckily, I didn't end up shot. But normally you would think the person that is in their right home would be the one that would be the aggressor, not the person who's actually entering the wrong, premises.
Right. No, exactly. I mean, we've all been, not we have all been in a situation, but people that frequent apartment buildings, live in apartment buildings, go in and out, realize that sometimes you're distracted, you're on your phone, whatever the case may be. You do get off on the wrong floor. You do approach and enter the wrong unit. And usually there are some shock or sometimes even laughter. And, a quick apology and understanding of the situation. And then all parties go their separate ways.
Yeah, because one would think, and again, this is not what the whole show is going to be about, but she walks into the wrong house. She sees, Botham Jean eating ice cream, whatever he's doing. First thing is like, what's going on here? Am I in the right place?
Right.
I don't think the first reaction normally would be to whoop out a gun and start blasting.
Right, exactly. I mean, even if she was scared, I mean, I think the attorney for his family kind of said it best. Play it out in her own mind. She does enter her house. She is in her own home. There is someone in her home eating ice cream or whatever they were doing. The point is, at no point beyond that was there ever any threatening or harmful action that would, rise to the level of self-defense where I'm being harmed and being attacked and being assaulted. So the fact that she was in his house is one thing, but even her own house, if somebody's in your house and they honestly make a mistake, again, like you say, you don't pull your gun to shoot them. What are you doing? Who are you? Whatever. And
exactly. I don't think the forensic evidence bore witness to any type of him rushing her or trying to be the aggressor. So I don't know what you were defending yourself against.
Right. And that's something that we can definitely explore in another episode as far as the state of mind of police officers. Because far too often there are incidents and tragic results that are based purely on their state of mind, their perception of a situation, not the reality of the situation. And that's a very serious thing. I'm killing you because I'm scared. It's very different than I need to use deadly force.
And I don't understand it. I want something good to listen to. I demand it. All the real artists on another planet, and me, I'm the last MC still standing.
They're two very different things. But so she was convicted of murder.
Mm-hmm.
There was some consideration or speculation about the punishment phase. What type of sentence she was going to
Yeah, was it adequate?
Well, no, I mean even before there was the speculation, because remember we knew we had the verdict. She's guilty, and people were like, okay, that makes sense, but there was no sentencing till the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I believe. So the whole thing was, okay, she's guilty, but how much time is she going to get? And she was basically facing up to 99 years on the high end and 10 years on the low end, and she received a sentence of
10 years.
10 years, which is on the low end.
Mm-hmm.
So the speculation before was that she was going to get light justice, and then you can make the case that she got the lightest justice possible because she literally got the lightest sentence possible.
Mm-hmm.
10 years, and with good behavior, she could be out in as early as 5 years.
5 years for the murder of an unarmed man.
Yeah, in his own home. So on one hand, you can say, okay, she's guilty, she's being punished, the system worked as well as you could hope. On the other hand, if you look at 99 years as being the maximum punishment and potentially only serving 5 years, you could see where there's this belief again that she's not really being held accountable.
Yeah, well, not accountable and not to the same standard as other, say, perpetrators, if you want to call her a perpetrator. Because obviously in the criminal justice system, we've seen situations where someone is guilty of murder and they can get 20, 30, 40, like you said, 100 years.
Yeah.
So it seems that, they, not sure they went and bent over backwards, but they did give her the lightest sentence for discharge.
Yeah, well, I mean, literally they did. So like you said, they did give her the lightest sentence for discharge. I try not to compare apples and oranges, other cases, because it's not always easy to merit one situation with another. But literally in this situation where she did virtually every single thing wrong, she still got the lightest sentence possible. And all that is clear. Like, that's not debatable. That's literally what happened. So then going through the post-sentencing,
The progression of events. The brother
Right.
of Botham Jean.
Well, before we get to that, I was going to say, I don't know if this was before or after the sentence was read. I thought it was after, but some people are saying it was before.
Yeah, I think it was before, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so just add that in, because if it was before, then this event happened before we knew she was going to get the 10 years. Okay, so the brother of Botham, John.
He felt the need to publicly forgive Miss Geiger and showed some public affection by hugging her in the court, which the judge allowed.
Okay, well, I would build up to that. I wouldn't just say that bluntly. I would say literally he was given the responsibility / opportunity to give the victim statement, impact statement, and he was, he was seated, and he made a very emotional plea. You can see that he was touched, and he said words that a lot of people did find shocking. And to your point, his words were basically of forgiveness, and well wishing. I wish the best for you, whatever. Which I think definitely caught a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah, I don't know if I could be such a magnanimous person if you had taken my family member away from me.
Agreed, and I think a lot of people process that, and that's a valid point.
And one thing I didn't think of before, but did that impact the sentence?
Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, which goes back to why I brought that up, because I thought the sentence was already known. So again, not saying the overall process is what it is. I just thought that was already known, and and you're right. It does make sense that they would let the victim speak before the sentence is read.
Because normally you do that if it's a heinous crime and they want to really speak their mind as to they think this to be a person held to the highest levels.
Right.
They're going to express that before they make their sentence.
Right. Now, the thing is, not knowing the process fully, it could be that the sentence was already determined. It wasn't read, it was determined. So maybe the jury or the judge or whoever in that situation issues the sentence already knows what it is, but let the victim speak first. So in other words, there's a lot of different factors that we're not fully aware of.
It's possible. I think the whole point of the victim impact statement is to help determine the justice, but right, I'm not sure.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, because if that's the way it played out, and again, we're getting a little off topic here, that's saying that the jury and or the judge hears what was said. If it's the jury, they go back into the room and work out the sentence, because they don't know what it is, and they don't decide it in front of each other. They would do that and come back out and issue the sentence, or the judge herself would issue the sentence. So if it is, so again, that's all up in the air. We weren't privy to the full effects of the trial. What really came out of it was Botham Jean's brother's victim statement, impact statement, and it was very supportive, forgiving, and it even led to him asking for a hug. And the judge allowed this to occur, which is usually abnormal, because it could have gone in any number of ways. I mean, let's say he wanted to harm her. Let's say she wanted to harm him. I mean, it's just customary that it's a verbal process, not a physical process.
Exactly.
And for whatever reason, the judge allowed it. They embrace. The moment goes viral. And then it leads to another moment. And I think that's really why we're here today. That's what today's episode is about. That's what we say a judgment call. Because
the judge then decided to give Amber Geiger a hug.
Right. And that's what I take issue with. See, I've had debates with people for the last couple of days, and I didn't take any issue with the brother's response for two reasons. First of all, if he has forgiveness in his heart, that's what's in his heart. So the same way you say you might not, the next person might. And neither one of you is right or wrong. That's how you feel. Mm-hmm. My issue is with the judge, because regardless of your personal feelings,
you're supposed to be impartial.
Right, you're supposed to be impartial because you are a representative of something. So I think a lot of people felt that Botham Jean's brother represented black guilt or black forgiveness. And I was like, no, he represents his own forgiveness. In other words, I feel the need to express what's in my heart or what I believe my brother would want me to do, right? And the mother even said it. That's how we raise our children. That's what his brother probably would have done. Not necessarily what she would have done or anyone else, but we gave him the opportunity to speak, and he spoke. And he represented himself. The judge did not represent herself. She represented the court. She represented the state. And that, to me, was where the issue is now, whereas you are a symbol, right? And, so what's your take on that? Because, again, Botham Jean's brother, he kind of led that path as far as this is a moment of
all right.
forgiveness.
He's a victim and family member of the victim that was gunned down. He has the right, like you said, to forgive.
Right.
As being the judge, an impartial party who's supposed to be dealing out justice and not be swayed. I think that was totally inappropriate. I think it gave sympathy, whether they had already had the verdict or not, to Amber Geiger. So, she's not really bad. We can, try not to give her maybe the maximum sentence.
Right.
She's a good person. I just think that it wasn't a very bad message to make.
Well, exactly. I would say I just think it was inappropriate because regardless of how she felt, and again, the judge has every right to have feelings. She's a human being. And she has every right to carry forgiveness in her heart because she's a Christian. But she was not there in that capacity. She was there in the capacity of a judge. And too many times people take their personal feelings and they mix it with their professional responsibility, and the job is not done the way it's supposed to. So in other words, I'm not saying she shouldn't have liked Amber Geiger or not. That's her personal business. It is what it is. But you were there as a judge. You're there to represent fairness and justice. And like you said, if you're going to allow the situation to be swayed by your feelings, right? Not the family's feelings, not the neighbor's feelings, your feelings as the judge, you're now undermining the process. The same way you shouldn't be angry and cursing and this is an outrage. No, you're the judge. You're supposed to be fair.
Well, exactly. And how many times, and again, I know we're not comparing case to case, but if the law is the law and certain sentence has to be adjudicated, whether you agree with it or not, that's what was rendered by the jury and you have to enforce it.
And coming back to this case, the judge now, which is supposed to be a symbol of law and order, is basically embracing a murderer, to put it bluntly, and like you said, symbolically kind of lessening the moment. And in a bigger picture now, it always seems that in the black community, that's the occurrence, that no matter what outrage happens, we express a level of forgiveness, which on one hand is admirable because it shows the true grace that you would expect from anyone who follows Jesus, right? Because that's what he came to teach us and express and share. But on the other hand, it's also sometimes used as a symbol of weakness. And again, I'm saying the symbol, right? Because again, I'm not talking about the brother, right? If somebody can hurt your brother, hurt my brother, and I have it in my heart to forgive them, then that's a representation between me and my faith in God. But if I'm here to do a job, and instead of doing that job, I'm now letting my feelings get in the way of it, then you have to say, how professional am I? And more importantly, what message does that send?
Another thing that we didn't discuss, but could have been a factor, I don't know if the judge is up for re-election, but I do believe that that police force is a big endorser of hers. So that could be also another motivation of showing, positive light on Miss Geiger. I won't call her officer because obviously she's not an officer anymore. And
right.
Based on her actions, she doesn't need to be an officer.
Right. No, exactly. That's clear. She definitely is not fit to be a police officer. And you opened up a much bigger door when you say, okay, are judges able to be fair and impartial when part of their um, job requirement is to appeal to certain groups to get that position? Because if that's going to impact your performance, then you're not being fair and impartial. Just by definition, I mean, some jurisdiction judges are appointed, and other jurisdictions are elected. And as an elected official, you're right. You're catering to voters and constituents. And if you allow that to affect your performance in the courtroom, you're not being fair and impartial.
Oh, that's true. And again, me and you both watch a lot of legal shows and legal issues and have opinions on certain things. We would be naive to think that outside influences don't influence judges as well. You know, you see in certain jurisdictions, certain penalties are applied more vigorously than others. So obviously they are affected by outside forces, even though the law should be the law.
Exactly. But I guess in this case, the expression of embrace, an expression of forgiveness was demonstrated. So it wasn't something that this is my internal feeling. This was displayed.
Yeah, and again, if this was done before the actual sentencing, it could have had a play. Obviously, if I'm the jury and I see the judge hugging the defendant, maybe I think, oh, this person is not that bad. I might grade and give less time than somebody who I think is unforgiving and a vile person.
Moving to our call to action phase, because we always end our episodes with a call to action and a step forward. What type of suggestion would you have? Not just in this particular case, but just in general. Because I guess what prompted me to want to do this episode is that I don't think other groups take us seriously or take our plight seriously enough. And then when you see that we seem to not be taking it serious enough, it almost makes it easier for them, or it does make it easier.
It seems that other groups take atrocities or things that happen to them a lot more seriously than us, and are much less likely to forgive or forgive quickly than we do. We tend to quickly compartmentalize and forgive and turn the other cheek and go about our business, whereas other groups seem to have a long memory and won't let things go. They're going to keep harping because they felt they were wrongly treated.
Right, and I think that's true, and that conversation goes both ways, because I also feel that the history of blacks, Africans, African descendants in this country and back in the motherland has always been a tradition of a strong spiritual core and culture and faith in the Creator. And many other groups claim to be very religious and spiritual, yet their actions show that they're really not.
Well, I'm going to end it for me in this way. If you look at the greatest change that we made in this country, it was with a nonviolent movement, and Dr. King understood and was able to lead people to do things that most young people were like, no, we want to fight, we want to crack heads. And he's like, that's not going to help you get the objectives that you want to get done. If they see you on TV with bats and clubs and you're fighting, oh, look at these thugs, look at these hoodlums, look at, these perpetrators. But if they see you walking in a peaceful march and being attacked by dogs and water hoses, that gains so much more sympathy. Now, it's a lot stronger to have to take that. Those people want to fight back. It's very hard to stand there while somebody's beating you and just turn the other cheek, as Jesus would say. But in the end, the gain was so much more.
Okay, and I agree with that, and that's why I went there, because on one hand, people say it's weak, but on the other hand, that's what those of us that are Christians are supposed to do, right? And a lot of people say they're Christians, but their actions show that they're not acting as Christians. So my call to action now would basically be to find examples where we can take ourselves more serious and to do that. And I think the reason I'm stressing on it is the judge, to me, not only should have remained a judge, but she could have conveyed an understanding of the situation, the complexity of the situation, the unfairness of the situation, how something that really wasn't intentional could have gone horribly wrong. And she could do all that by still maintaining her position as a judge and maintaining the impartiality of her role. Yes. Instead, she became a maternal figure, a pastoral figure, and again, she projected this almost need to apologize to the perpetrator. Like, I'm sorry that this happened. I'm sorry that you're in this situation that you created.
Yeah, I've seen many times, and not many times, but I've watched on court TV where judges are able to explain and detail their disdain or whatever for the situation and still remain impartial. Again, they're not coming down and making a physical play or a physical situation where you're hugging the individual. You can just say whatever it is you were feeling if you wanted to in a certain professional manner that wouldn't be construed as, apologizing for what had to happen.
Right. And the reason, and I'll take it one step further as far as my call to action, is that at some point it should have really been stressed that you messed up, Amber. You messed up. I'm sorry you messed up, but you messed up. You overreacted to a situation where you made a mistake in someone else's home and you killed them, and everyone has to deal with that tragedy. And you can be an example of how we all need to have cooler heads. We need to be more responsible. If this is how police are being trained, they're being trained very poorly. And honestly, this is not acceptable. Now, I do wish the best for you because you're a human being. I hope that you recover and are able to transform your life to whatever you have left of a life. But you caused this situation. And nothing changes that. And it's not about hatred or anything. It is about accountability. Because what comes across now is we're all sorry. This shouldn't have happened. And somehow we have to rally around Amber.
Yes, it's someone mitigating her fault. It is her bad. She's the one that acted improperly.
Right. And maybe, I don't know, from my own perspective, maybe I'd have felt better if Amber was the one sobbing and saying, "Can I hug them?" And maybe the judge would have said no, which would have been appropriate. Or maybe the judge would have said, "Wow, you know what? Not too many times do I see the perpetrator, the defendant, wanting to hug the family that they just assaulted. So maybe I'll allow that because that's a bigger symbol of what needs to happen." So again, that's just where I think the judge was wrong. And I think the call to action is we as African Americans have to take, like you said, our suffering and our plight much more serious so that other people know to take it serious too. But if we laugh it off and if we
If it's not serious to us, it's not serious to them.
Right. These things just happen. No, they don't happen. People don't get killed in a house eating ice cream. That doesn't happen. That should never be considered acceptable. We should never say, well, maybe if he was on the other couch. What? He was in his house. He was eating ice cream at home at night, hurting no one. He still was killed, and still somehow it was almost as if there was a co-victim. Oh man, poor Botham and Amber. No, that's not.
Yes. it's his fault because he didn't have the door locked or whatever, you know,
Right,
they want to
exactly,
use.
something. And again, this is the point. It's a horrible tragedy, and again, I actually commend this brother for reminding us that, you know, our hearts should be bigger than our minds sometimes. But the judge, to me, you had a responsibility to show us that we have to be mindful of what happens, and we have to own up to it. So, I mean, that's all I have for this episode. I'm Sean P.
I'm Big Root.
And we're the brothers.
I'm tired of these same rap songs. Every new hit's just to fucking sing along. Rap is so boring, now correct me if I'm wrong. It's like they took the art out the fucking art form. What's going on, man? I don't understand it. I want something good to listen to, I demand it. All the real artists on another planet, and me, I'm the last MC still standing.